Hello, everybody. My name is Galen J Byrnside, and this is the Get Your Life series. It is more than just a podcast, it's a movement towards embracing and enhancing all aspects of life. We'll dive deep into topics that matter most, from love and life to mental health, sexual assault, and everything in between. Our mission is to inspire, educate, and support you through your life's journey. So today, what we're talking about is domestic violence. And I have titled this episode, Silence No More, Reclaiming Your Voice After Domestic Violence. So today, we're going to deep dive into a crucial conversation about reclaiming one's voice after surviving domestic violence. It's a topic often overlooked yet profoundly impactful on survivors' sense of power and self-expression. We're going to go over some great topics in the episode, so I hope you're ready. So some of the topics that we're going to talk about is understanding the impact of domestic violence. We're going to break this up into a few topics like emotional suppression, fear of retaliation, self-preservation, the desire to preserve the relationship, normalization of abuse, and more. We're going to talk about the journey to reclaiming your voice. We're going to cover some topics like breaking the cycle of emotional suppression, moving forward from diminished self-confidence, moving from isolation, and more. We're going to talk about your community and some support options, several networks that you can reach out to get help, both local to Charlotte and some other areas. And then we're going to close it out with a recap and reflection. So, first things first, understanding the impact of domestic violence. So the first topic I want to talk about is emotional suppression. So constant fear and trauma can lead victims to suppress their emotion, including their ability to express themselves. Emotional suppression in the context of a domestic violence relationship is a complex and multifaceted issue. So it involves the deliberate attempt to hide, ignore, or inhibit emotional responses due to fear, intimidation, or an effort to maintain peace in a volatile environment. So here's an in-depth look at how emotional suppression can manifest and its impacts on individuals experiencing domestic violence. So some mechanisms of emotional suppression can look like fear of retaliation. Individuals may suppress their emotions to avoid triggering further aggression or violence from their abuser. The fear of retaliation for expressing dissatisfaction, anger, or sadness can lead to a habit of hiding one's true feelings. Self-preservation. In an attempt to protect themselves, victims might suppress negative emotion that could escalate a dangerous situation. This can be seen as a survival strategy, where the individual tries to maintain a semblance of calm in the face of potential harm. Desire to preserve the relationship. Some individuals believe that by not expressing negative emotions, they can keep the relationship intact, especially if they hope for change in their partner's behavior. This is often rooted in complex emotions, including love, dependency, or fear of being alone. Normalization of abuse. So over time, victims may begin to accept abusive behaviors as normal, may not even recognize their own emotions as valid or worthy of attention. The normalization can lead to a diminished ability to identify and express emotions. So what are some impacts of emotional suppression? So there is some psychological distress. Continuous suppression of emotions can lead to increased anxiety, depression, and stress. The inability to express feelings can exacerbate feelings of isolation and helplessness. There's physical health problems. Research has linked chronic emotional suppression to various health issues, including cardiovascular problems, immune system suppression, and increased susceptibility to chronic illness. Eroded self-identity. So constantly hiding one's emotions can lead to a loss of self. Victims may struggle with self-esteem and self-worth, feeling as though they no longer know themselves outside of the abusive relationship. Impaired emotional regulation. So over time, the habit of suppressing emotions can impair an individual's ability to regulate their emotions effectively, leading to difficulties in future relationships and social interactions. This can manifest as sudden outbursts, severe anxiety, or difficulty connecting with others on an emotional level. So that is a summary of what it can do to you. And if you suppress your emotions, right, those are some impacts of that. Another topic that we're going to talk about is diminish self-confidence. The continuous belittlement often faced by survivors can erode their self-confidence, making it challenging to speak up or express opinions. Domestic violence has a profound impact on individuals' self-confidence, systematically breaking down their sense of self-worth and autonomy. This erosion of self-confidence occurs through various mechanisms, directly affecting how survivors perceive themselves and their abilities to make decisions or assert control over their lives. Here's detailed exploration of the process, right? So some mechanisms through which domestic violence diminishes self-confidence can be constant criticism and belittlement. Abusers often use verbal and emotional abuse to criticize and belittle their victims, targeting their appearance, intelligence, capabilities, and even their basic worth as individuals. This relentless negativity can lead survivors to internalize these criticisms, leading to a deep-seated belief that they are inadequate, unworthy of, or incapable of love. Isolation. Abusers frequently isolate their victims from friends, family, and support networks, making them feel alone and dependent on the abuser. This isolation not only reinforces the abuser's narrative that the victim is unworthy of love and support, but also erodes the victim's belief in their ability to function independently in the outside world. Control and manipulation, which is a big one. By controlling aspects of the victim's life, such as finances, social interactions, daily activities, abusers reinforce a power imbalance. Victims may come to believe that they are incapable of making decisions or managing their lives without the abuser's input or permission, further diminishing their self-confidence. Threats and intimidation. The use of threats, whether of physical harm, further isolation, or other forms of retaliation, creates an environment of fear and submission. Living under constant threat can make victims doubt their strength and resilience, undermining their confidence and their ability to protect themselves or escape the situation. One of my favorite words, gaslighting, because I have been gaslighted in several relationships. This form of psychological manipulation involves questioning the victim's memory, perception, and sanity. By making victims question their own experiences and perceptions, abusers can further diminish their self-confidence and independence. So what are some impacts of diminished self-confidence? So you can have difficulty making decisions. Victims may struggle with decision-making, feel uncertain and fearful of making the wrong choice due to a diminished trust in their judgment, a fear of failure. The constant criticism and belittlement can lead to a paralyzing fear of failure, making it challenging to take risks or attempt new endeavors. Social withdrawal. Low self-confidence can cause individuals to withdraw from social situations, fearing judgment or rejection from others. Professional setbacks. The lack of confidence can extend into the professional realm, affecting job performance and the ability to pursue career opportunities. Vulnerability to further abuse. Unfortunately, diminished self-confidence can make individuals more susceptible to staying in abusive relationships or entering into new ones, as they may feel undeserving of a healthy, respectful partner. Another impact of domestic violence in this next topic is isolation. Abusers can often isolate their victims, cutting them off from support systems. This isolation can lead to a sense of helplessness, further silencing their voice. Domestic violence often leads to isolation, a tactic used by abusers to control their victims and cut them off from resources and support that could help them escape the abusive situation. This isolation can both be physical and emotional, significantly impacting the victim's ability to seek help and maintain personal relationships outside of the abusive environment. Understanding the mechanism through which isolation occurs and its effects can provide insight into the challenges faced by survivors and the importance of community support. So some of the mechanism of isolation in domestic violence can be controlling social interactions. Abusers may dictate who their victims can see, where they can go, and when they can go there. By controlling social interactions, abusers limit opportunities for victims to connect with others or seek help. Monitoring communications. Abusers often monitor their victims' phone calls, their text messages, emails, and social media, further limiting their privacy and freedom to reach out to others. This surveillance can make victims feel trapped and unable to communicate freely with friends, family, or support services. Degrading relationships. Through manipulation and lies, abusers can poison relationships between victims and their loved ones, making it seem like the victim is to blame for the abuse or that they cannot be trusted. Over time, this can lead to estrangement and a loss of support networks. It can also induce shame and guilt by making their victims feel responsible for the abuse or portraying them as inadequate. Abusers can instill feelings of shame and guilt. These feelings can prevent victims from seeking help or sharing their experiences for fear of judgment or disbelief. Restricting financial independence. Financial control is a common tactic to enforce isolation. By restricting access to money, employment opportunities, or education, abusers ensure that their victims are financially dependent upon them, making it difficult to leave the abusive environment. So what are some effects of isolation? Reduce access to help. Isolation effectively cuts victims off from the outside world, limiting their knowledge of and access to resources and support services that could help them escape the abusive situation. Increase vulnerability. Isolation increases the victim's dependence on the abuser, making it more challenging to leave the relationship and establish independence. Emotional and psychological distress. The loneliness and lack of social support can lead to increased anxiety, depression, and a sense of hopelessness, further impacting the victim's mental health and well-being. Loss of personal identity. Being cut off from social networks and activities that once brought joy and fulfillment can lead victims to lose a sense of who they are outside of the relationship, diminishing their self-esteem and self-worth. I know that that was a lot of information and a lot of ground that I just covered, but we're going to move into something a little bit more positive about how do we reclaim our voice? How do we break that cycle of the abuse? So breaking the cycle of emotional suppression, breaking free from the cycle of emotional suppression involves recognizing the harm it causes and taking steps towards healing. This can include seeking support from professionals such as therapists, life coaches, who specialize in trauma and domestic violence, joining support groups, and gradually learning to express emotions in a safe environment. Empowerment and self-care activities can also play crucial roles in reclaiming one's voice and identity. Understanding the depth and impact of emotional suppression in domestic violence relationship underscores the need for compassionate support and resources for those affected. As individuals begin to heal and express their emotions freely, they can start to reclaim their power and move forward towards a healthier, more fulfilling life. Moving forward from diminished self-confidence. Rebuilding self-confidence after experiencing domestic violence is a gradual process that often requires support from professionals, again, such as therapists specializing in trauma and abuse, and as well as support groups and safe, supportive relationships. Healing practices might include small, achievable goals, practicing self-compassion, and positive self-talk, and engaging in activities that reinforce a sense of competence and achievement. Empowering survivors to rediscover their self-worth, strength, and independence is a crucial step in the journey towards healing and reclaiming their lives free from abuse. We're also going to talk about moving forward from isolation. Seek support. Reaching out to trusted friends, family members, professionals can provide emotional support and practical assistance. Support groups and organizations dedicated to helping survivors of domestic violence can also offer understanding and resources. Rebuild your social networks. Gradually rebuilding social connections is crucial. This can start with small steps like participating in community activities, joining clubs or groups that align with one's interests, or volunteering. These activities can help rebuild a sense of belonging and community. Educate yourself. Learning about the dynamics of domestic violence can empower survivors to understand their experiences better. recognize patterns of abuse and build resilience against future manipulation or control. Develop independence. Working towards financial and emotional independence is crucial. This may involve pursuing educational opportunities, job training, or employment that can provide the means to live autonomous. Self-care and healing. Prioritizing physical and emotional well-being through self-care practices can aid in healing. Activities like exercise, meditation, journaling, or engaging in hobbies can foster a sense of peace and personal fulfillment. And my personal favorite, setting boundaries. Learning to set healthy boundaries with others, including families, friends, future partners, can help survivors protect their emotional space and regain control over their lives. Our last big segment before we wrap up is community and support. So some of the support services that are local to me, as I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, are Charlotte Community Support Services. So Community Support Services provides benefit claim filing for military veterans, confidential domestic violence therapy, counseling for children and adults, substance use counseling for people in shelters or detention centers, and services for people experiencing homelessness and housing instability. Another organization is Safe Alliance. They provide domestic violence shelters for residents in Mecklenburg County, residents in imminent danger, ready to escape from a domestic violence situation. They provide counseling, substance user services, life skills, and career planning services, and more. One of my personal favorites, the Choose Courage Foundation. The Choose Courage Foundation began as a photography project, photographing survivors of domestic violence so they could see their amazing beauty. What started as a one-time concept morphed into a charity art show celebrating 12 survivors of domestic violence from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. During the preparation for the show, a national nonprofit was formed, the Choose Courage Foundation, which has become a passionate pursuit to make a difference, highlighting what is possible and even admirable. They are providing that darkness does not have to define a victim and anyone can choose courage. They are reaching out to victims through social media campaigns who feel trapped by the stigma and controlled into silence. I have personally participated in this and I absolutely love it. I love the mission and I love the power that I felt after I did the campaign. The Domestic Violence National Hotline, which is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. The National Domestic Violence Hotline provides essential tools and support to help survivors of domestic violence so they can live their lives free of abuse. Contacts to the hotline can expect highly trained expert advocates to offer free, confidential, and compassionate support, crisis intervention information, and referral services in over 200 languages. So what can you do? So I like to call this a call to action. So if you know someone in your life who might be experiencing domestic violence, I encourage you to offer your support and understanding. It's important to approach the situation with compassion, patience, and without judgment. Your support can make a significant difference in their journey towards safety and recovery. Listen actively, believe their story, offer resources, and remind them that they are not alone. Remember, the simple act of showing you care can be incredibly empowering for someone who feels isolated by abuse. Encourage them to seek professional help and assure them of your support throughout the process. Together, we can create a community that stands against domestic violence and supports healing and empowerment for all of its survivors. So in conclusion, I'm going to recap and reflect on some of the key topics that we talked about, starting off with diminishing self-confidence. Domestic violence erodes self-confidence through constant criticism, belittlement, and control over the victim's life. Abuser makes their victims feel inadequate, unworthy, and incapable, significantly impacting their self-esteem and sense of autonomy. The impact on emotional suppression. Victims of domestic violence can often suppress their emotions as a survival strategy to avoid triggering further abuse or because they believe it will help maintain the relationship. This suppression is a response to fear, intimidation, and the continuous undermining of their feelings and experiences, leading to increased psychological distress and diminished emotional awareness. Isolation. That is a key tactic used by abusers to control their victims and prevent them from seeking help. This is achieved by controlling social interactions, monitoring communications, limiting financial independence, damaging relationships with friends and family, and through threats and intimidation, isolation weakens the victim support network, making it harder to escape the abusive situation. Each of these factors diminish self-confidence, emotional suppression, isolation, interact and compound the challenges faced by victims of domestic violence, making it crucial to address them comprehensively in support and recovery efforts. So, before we close today's episode, I want to take a moment to express my deepest gratitude to each and every one of you for tuning in. Your continued support for the Get Your Life series means the world to me. Galen J Byrnside again of Dope Attire to Inspire LLC. Today's conversation was not an easy one, but it's discussions like this that bring light to the shadows and offer hope and understanding to those who need it most. Your willingness to listen, learn, and engage with such challenging topics empower us all to make a difference in our communities and beyond. If today's episode moved you, inspired you, or opened your eyes to the realities of domestic violence and its profound impacts, I encourage you to share it with someone who might benefit from hearing it. Together, we're not just a community of listeners, we're a force for change, compassion, and healing. Thank you for giving me your time, your open hearts, and your unwavering support. Let's continue to inspire, uplift, and support each other on this journey. Stay tuned for our next episode. And until then, keep striving to get your life to the fullest, surrounded by love and positivity. Remember, you are not alone, and together we can make a difference.